Okay, I'm gonna give you guys another video about the ancestors and about slavery, and I'm probably gonna have to break this up. And I was told that there's a group of you who want to know more, so I'm gonna give you the more information. The question originally was, why now when it comes to the ancestors being, freed in essence from the plantation? And I'm gonna give you a bigger scenario. Why slavery? What many people don't realize is that slavery was a type of spiritual warfare. And I have people who say, well, if the people who were enslaved were smart, or they were spiritual giants in their whatever practice, or they were warriors, how is it that they were able to be enslaved in the first place? And my answer is going to come on multiple levels. And it's going to come by me showing you a couple of things. One, when you look at practices now, hoodoo, voodoo, witchcraft, a lot of African practices, a lot of Native American practices, you have leaders within those religious or spiritual groups who teach people things. In my life, I come from a shaman and an herbalist. I'm an ancestral shaman, herbal scientist. And the information that I was taught initially, I was taught face to face with some of it, and some of it is in my DNA. But that information that was taught to me was not taught to everyone. So I have siblings, I have cousins, I have other people. They didn't teach things to everyone. And why? Why didn't they? Why wouldn't they? Well, back when we first got into, let's just talk about the slavery for the United States, because slavery has occurred all around the world at different points. But let's just talk about the slavery of the transatlantic slave trade, that portion of slavery, because I recognize that some people who were enslaved did not come through that route. Some people who were already here were enslaved, and I do also recognize that there were some non-black people, non-African people who were enslaved, and the slave masters were of all different creed. Let's take that aside. Let's talk specifically about what was happening when it comes to the Africans that were actually on the continent of Africa, in the Nigeria area, in different parts. In those different parts, we had people who were the people who knew what was coming. They were the people who were able to predict the future, to tell things that were coming. And they were giving out that information, and they were sharing that information, and they were warning people. But as with any group of people, you always have a Judas in the midst. And sometimes we tell the Judas information that we should not. And that is why you have today closed practices. You have people who do not tell outside of their circles, because they understand that the destruction and the downfall comes from within, right? When that person gets the information, that's how you are destroyed. People who were captured during slavery time in that route, they were captured due to an internal enemy. An internal enemy who turned them over, who gave up information to where their oppressors, and I'm not talking about the ones who came from the Americas, I'm talking about the ones who were actually in Africa. There was a set of people who sold their own people into slavery, and some of them were different cultures, different religious beliefs, different practices, and they wanted to wipe out a group of people, so they sent them into this slavery. That's one piece of it. But all of that was spiritual warfare, because people were warned and they did not heed the message. They did not heed, this is something that is coming. And then what did take place is that when slavery occurred from the Africa side of it, during that whole time, the entire continent of Africa was impacted by this egregious act of selling off their people. And I'm not even speaking on the ones who were stolen and things of that nature. So let's talk about the group of people that were taken away from the lands, the types of people that they took. They took young people, they took smart people, they took people who were strong or who had good bodies or who had the potential to do physical work. They did not take the elders in essence, meaning the ones who had all of the spiritual knowledge, all of those things. Because the first thing you want to do when you want to rule over a people is you want to get rid of that foundation. So those people were removed immediately, and you know what I mean by that. So those people were not really sought after. So if they knew someone had those abilities to like bring people together, they would immediately try to get rid of those people. And unfortunately, most people in the world cannot execute a vision, execute a plan. They need to follow someone else's vision or someone else's plan. That is why when you see the history, you see things such as Harriet Tubman did this, Rosa Parks did this, these people did this, and then we followed behind. You don't normally see a whole group of people all got together and was like, we're going to all do this. It was normally spearheaded by one person had a vision and other people followed suit. So what they would do during that time of the slavery, once they would get people over to the United States, they would separate families. So then, in mind you, there were people who had different tongues, right? They spoke different languages. So you could be in a community where you weren't even speaking the same language as someone, and this person could be someone who was your enemy when you were all on one continent, a different continent. And so what you knew, your things that grounded you, all of that was gone. So in that sense, there's a lot of confusion, and the spirit of confusion makes it hard for people to come together. It makes it easier for people to be divided. And we still see that spirit of confusion going on today in the United States. So in essence, we see where people were focused when they were in their homeland, they were focused on natural healing, natural medicine, their reverence of their elders, their reverence of the body, all these things that they had. All of that was stripped away. And then what was done was the slaves who were in the United States, who came from those areas, they were given a book, the Bible. And over time, folks, let's start, they could not read. So they were given information that was supposedly from the Bible that was taught to them in order to keep them stuck and oppressed. And you have seen in the last 6-7 years the deconstructing of religion in the United States. So you have seen a lot of people turning back to some of their natural beliefs, and some people even going as far as to find missing parts of the Bible, finding out that the Bible that's in the United States is not the same as the Bible that's even in Ethiopia, a lot of different things. So people were researching and learning and trying to find out the truth and trying to separate the Bible and what they were taught and the parts of it that they were taught that were meant to keep them oppressed from the reality of what they had before there ever was a Bible. That's not to say that Christianity is all bad. I do not believe that. I do believe that it is a tool that has been used to oppress not just people here in the United States, but in other places. And not all Christians are oppressors, but I do believe that that theology was a key factor in keeping the slaves oppressed. In addition to, once they would find out that someone actually had knowledge of their ancient tongues and things of that nature, they would eradicate them. Case in point, Native Americans, same thing happened. A lot of the Native Americans even tell you there's a lot of their history that is gone, erased, eradicated, because in order for them to be subjected to someone else, they had to lose their identity. And same thing with the black people and different people who came over here or who were already here who were enslaved. Their identity was taken and stolen from them. The thing is that it was taken from their conscious mind. it was never removed from the subconscious mind. And in the spiritual awakening that has taken place, many people have reconnected to that subconscious. Many people have said to me, I always felt that this didn't feel right, and I always knew something different was there, because it is encoded in your DNA. And another big piece of that being encoded in your DNA is that quantum physics came about. And quantum physics allowed people to understand that memories are encoded in your DNA. So then that allowed people to believe what they previously thought was not true. Okay? So they previously would say, no, they're telling me, the masses are telling me one thing, and that's not right. And now they're finding out, yes, they have always been right. And in all these 6-7 years, you have people who are saying, oh, wait a minute, quantum physics is showing that people don't necessarily die, that there's another level. They're seeing all these things about there's aliens. There's a lot of different information that has been brought to light, to where people are more comfortable exploring their ancestral DNA roots and what is within them. And this is not to say that the people who have been practicing hoodoo and all these other voodoo and all those things have not had this information. Even many of them have a watered down version of what the original practice was. And that was because they too had to go in hiding. They too had to stop speaking about it out loud. Witchcraft, pagans, a lot of anything that was not in line with whatever establishment was ruling. And I say that because this has not only been done with Christianity. In other countries where Christianity was not the predominant religion, this has also taken place. So it happens a lot. That is spiritual warfare. And when people don't recognize spiritual warfare, you fall prey to it. Now, I've said that because we are in the middle of another spiritual warfare. At the same time as we have this huge spiritual awakening, there's a spiritual warfare going on. And many people are clueless. Many people are focused on getting the bag, getting the body, getting the dude, and they're not really seeing the spiritual warfare that is taking place. And this is across all of the world. This is not just United States based. The spiritual warfare is showing itself in all these wars that are popping up between neighbors. A lot of this stuff that's happening is truly a spiritual fight. And we are, as a society, losing that battle. Now, in every set of spiritual warfare, there's always going to be a group of survivors. There's always going to be people who know how to be protected, and their lineages is going to keep going, right? Always. So that is my first part of this video and this series of what I want to say. And then I have another thing that I'm going to say to you guys, but I'm going to cut this off because it gets too long, and I know these platforms get kind of angry. So part 2 is coming up.